What if the most dangerous weapon a special operator carries isn't a rifle, a blade, or an explosive, but the mind behind them? Studies of elite military units consistently show that the majority of candidates who fail selection don't wash out because their bodies give up. They wash out because their minds do. Think about that for a moment. Men and women who are, by any measurable standard, among the most physically capable human beings on the planet. People who have trained obsessively, who have dedicated years of their lives to building strength and endurance. They don't fail because their legs stop working or their lungs give out. They fail because something inside their head tells them to stop, and they listen. That single fact tells you almost everything you need to know about what separates an elite special operator from everyone else. Welcome to a deep dive into one of the most fascinating and least understood dimensions of military science, the psychology of the special operator. Today we're going beyond the tactics, beyond the gear, beyond the physical conditioning that gets so much attention. We're going inside the mind. We're exploring what it actually takes psychologically to operate at the absolute edge of human capability, in the darkest corners of the world, under conditions that most people will never come close to experiencing, making decisions where the margin for error is measured not in percentages, but in lives. Because here's the truth that doesn't make it into the recruitment posters. The battlefield that special operators must master first is not the one with terrain and enemy combatants. It's the one inside their own skulls. To understand why exceptional psychology is not just useful, but absolutely essential in special operations, you have to understand the environment these operators are thrown into. We're not talking about controlled stress or manageable pressure. We're talking about a sustained, compounding assault on every single cognitive and emotional system the human mind possesses. Consider what a special operations mission can look like at its most demanding. An operator may have been awake for 36, 48, even 72 hours. They are physically depleted, muscles burning, vision blurring, hunger gnawing at their concentration. They are operating in a foreign environment, often in complete darkness, in enemy territory where every shadow could be a threat and every decision could trigger a catastrophic chain of events. Communications may be degraded. The intelligence picture they were given hours ago may have already fallen apart. And now, in real time, with incomplete information and a body running on fumes, they have to make split-second decisions that are tactically sound, legally defensible, and morally coherent. This is where ordinary mental fortitude simply collapses. And it's important to be honest about that, not as a criticism, but as a recognition of what human beings are actually built to handle. The human nervous system evolved to manage fear in short, intense bursts, then recover. It was not designed to sustain optimal cognitive function across days of sleep deprivation under persistent mortal threat, while simultaneously navigating ambiguous rules of engagement and the weight of life or death responsibility. That combination, fear, uncertainty, fatigue, and moral complexity all converging at once, doesn't just stress the mind, it overwhelms it. It causes tunnel vision. It triggers reactive, impulsive decision-making. It corrodes judgment and erodes the kind of calm, precise thinking that special operations demands. This is precisely why the psychological profile of a special operator cannot be reduced to something as simple as bravery. Bravery is real, and it matters. But bravery alone is a blunt instrument. You can be incredibly brave and still freeze when the mission goes sideways. You can be fearless and still fall apart psychologically when a teammate goes down and the extraction window closes and everything you planned for is suddenly irrelevant. Bravery doesn't tell you how to regulate your emotional state in the middle of chaos. It doesn't tell you how to think clearly when your amygdala is screaming at you to run. What we're really talking about, what the research and the real-world evidence consistently points to, are three foundational psychological pillars that define the elite operator mindset. The first is resilience, not just the ability to survive hardship, but the ability to absorb punishment, physical, psychological, emotional, and continue to function effectively. The second is adaptability, the capacity to update your mental model of a situation instantly, to abandon a failing plan without panic, and to find workable solutions in environments that are constantly unpredictably shifting. And the third, perhaps the most sophisticated of all, is emotional regulation, the ability to acknowledge what you're feeling without being controlled by it, to feel fear, acknowledge it, and then act with precision anyway. These aren't abstract virtues. They are measurable, trainable psychological capacities. And understanding how they are built, how ordinary people are forged through extraordinary processes into individuals who possess these qualities in abundance, is exactly what we're going to explore. Because the story of how elite operators are made mentally is, in many ways, more remarkable than anything they do on the battlefield itself. So how exactly are those three pillars, resilience, adaptability, and emotional regulation, actually built? Because these qualities don't simply emerge from good intentions or motivational speeches. They are constructed systematically and deliberately through one of the most psychologically sophisticated development processes in human history. Start with resilience. The common misconception is that resilience means being tough, stoic, unfeeling, immune to pain. That's not what the research shows, and it's not what selection programs actually produce. Real resilience is built through a specific formula: progressive stress exposure combined with the repeated experience of getting through that stress and surviving it. Selection programs, like those used to qualify candidates for Tier 1 Special Operations units, don't simply break people down. They break people down and then force them to find out what happens next. And what happens next for those who continue is that they discover they had more in them than they believed. That discovery, that direct, visceral, undeniable experience of exceeding your own perceived limits, is the actual mechanism through which resilience is forged. Repetition after repetition, misery stacked on misery, not to destroy candidates, but to systematically dismantle the false ceilings they had placed on themselves and replace them with something far more durable. Adaptability is built through a different but related process, one centered on chaos management. Elite training environments are specifically engineered to change. Plans fall apart. Scenarios shift mid-execution. Information that seems solid evaporates, and operators learn through thousands of hours of repetition under these conditions to avoid the cognitive trap of fixating on what was supposed to happen. The brain naturally resists change. It invests in its own predictions and resists updating them, especially under pressure. Training overrides that tendency by making adaptability the price of survival. Over and over again, operators are forced to abandon their original mental model, rapidly reassess, and execute a new plan. Not perfectly, but effectively and fast. The goal isn't to produce operators who never feel disoriented when conditions change. The goal is to produce operators who can feel that disorientation and continue functioning anyway. Emotional regulation is where the psychology becomes most nuanced and most critical. The objective is not to eliminate emotion. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of what elite operators actually are. Eliminating emotion doesn't produce better warriors. It produces inflexible ones, operators who lose the intuitive threat recognition and moral judgment that emotions actually support. What training produces instead is the capacity to metabolize emotion in real time, to acknowledge fear, anger, grief, and continue to act with precision. Techniques ranging from controlled breathing protocols to cognitive reframing exercises to deliberate stress inoculation all serve the same purpose: building a gap between stimulus and response. That gap, even measured in fractions of a second, is the difference between reactive and deliberate action, between panic and performance. Now, let me give you a concrete example of what all of this looks like when it comes together under real-world conditions. During a direct action raid in a compound that had been assessed as lightly defended, a small team of operators took immediate and devastating contact. In the opening seconds of the engagement, the team leader was seriously wounded, and the team's communication system was damaged. The most senior operator, still on his feet, a man who had been awake for over 40 hours, suddenly found himself in command of a deteriorating situation with no clear extraction plan, degraded comms, a casualty who needed immediate evacuation, and an enemy force whose actual size was still unknown. By any reasonable measure, this was the precise combination of circumstances designed to overwhelm the human mind. What he did was this: he stopped. Not for long. Seconds. He controlled his breathing. He systematically pushed aside everything he could not control and focused exclusively on what he could. He identified his two most immediate priorities, suppressing the threat and stabilizing his teammate, and he communicated them with quiet, direct precision. No panic in his voice, no paralysis. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because his training had built a version of him that could hold fear and function simultaneously. His team rallied around that calm like it was a physical anchor. They got their teammate out. They completed their objective. They came home. That's not a story about a superhuman. That's a story about what relentless psychological conditioning actually produces in a real human being under real pressure. The core truth this all points to is straightforward, even if the process that leads there is anything but. Elite performance at the special operations level is not the product of natural gifts alone. It is the product of traits, resilience, adaptability, emotional regulation that have been identified, targeted, and refined through years of the most demanding mental conditioning that exists. The mind, like the body, responds to the right kind of stress applied in the right kind of way. And what comes out the other side is something genuinely extraordinary. That's what we've uncovered today. If any of this resonated with you, if the psychology of human performance under extreme conditions is something you want to explore further, drop your thoughts in the comments. What does mental resilience mean to you? And if you want to keep going deeper into the science and stories behind elite human performance, subscribe. There's a lot more to come.